becca. My God be my provider. He be my protector. So far they go higher. Yo baby I need my becca. My God be my provider. He be my protector. So far they go higher. Oh yeah. Me nyawo biampo body. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo body. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Of me now, no be later. No be later. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Of me now, no be later. Yeah. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama. Me nyawo biampo body. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo body. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well.
You munyai. But you make it come and once I see I record with a stolen mic. Ubi see my phone coming here can see na two main pie. Ubi banya moshe na mu destroy the soul inside. My baby I'm on a monkai.
Shame on you, I pray my God go favor you. What we do be deja vu. Omunya yanke fie dedu. Shame on you, I pray my God go favor you. What we do be deja vu. Omunya yanke fie dedu. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama. Me nyawo biampo body. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo body. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Of me now, no be later. No be later. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Of me now, no be later. Yeah.
Kind of guy who will love you all over, and you're just the kind of girl who make love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over, and you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. I wanna be your number one. The tide is high, but I hold it on. I wanna be your number
Welcome to the fourth branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense a spirit of patriotism and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the 4th branch program. Welcome. Hope you had a good weekend. This week we continue the conversation about the race to 2020. As usual, we'll continue to take a look at why there is still a record deficit of leadership in the Republican Party. That and much more as we return. I am MD, host of the 4th branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events as well as to understand topics of legislations. The 4th branch project is not associated with any political party, and we at the 4th branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back. Once again, welcome to the 4th branch program. Last week I missed a couple of days. To those of you who care, I humbly apologize for that. That was Friday at 2 p.m. and Saturday at 10:30 a.m. I was literally dragged to attend family matters. I hope you had a good weekend and you're ready to continue our conversation about the race to 2020 and also to take a look at why there is still a record deficit of leadership in the Republican Party. Today, as you can see, we will be talking with, this is the individual we will feature in our discussion for the race to 2020. For the past few weeks, we have been each day visual. Now we've been doing for the Democrat Party almost exclusively. We will, as soon as we're done with the Democrat Party, we will take a look at the official candidate in the Republican Party and as well as those who are considering a run in the Republican Party in order to challenge Donald Trump for the presidency. Now, Kamala Harris is the individual we will be taking a look at today. But before we do that, we ought to take a look at, well, the importance of this presidential election, the 2020. Now, for the past 2 years, since the last presidential election in 2016, the country has been in a very different state. Not for the better, anyone would add to that. As such, the next presidential election cannot be just another presidential election. It cannot just be the status quo. It cannot just be voting for your party because that's what you have been doing since you were born, since you've come to existence, since, and your parents, your grandparents or your great grandparents have been doing that, and you have followed their footsteps without even asking any question as to why. There is something bigger than a political party, and there is something much bigger than any particular individual. George Washington, who was the first president and very much admired, revered by everyone in this country, knew the importance of the Oval Office and also understood the danger of any particular group of people attributing more importance, more loyalty to that individual. George Washington could have been president until he died, because nobody would have even challenged him for the post. And yet, after 8 years in office, being exactly the type of person that he was, loyal to the Newfoundland, loyal to the new country, and wanting to set an example for all those who followed him, that it is about the United States of America, not about George Washington, not about any of the framers of the Constitution. Now, he is a man who could have taken advantage. He is a man who could have exploited the system. And yet, he knew that loyalty to the country is much, much, much more important than loyalty to any man or to any political party. And coincidentally, George Washington did not belong to any political party. It is, however, more than 200 years, and we are looking at a country which has gone completely astray from that example set by George Washington, with not just constituents becoming completely disloyal to the country, but legislators also following the same path. Yesterday, over the weekend, you heard the chairman or the new chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham, yelling that Donald Trump cannot be impeached because he did not do anything wrong. Now, we're not here to talk about the impeachment of Donald Trump. We're not here to talk about any aspect of the outcome of the Russia investigation, but we cannot just not pay attention to those words by a senator, Lindsey Graham of all people, who said that Donald Trump did not do anything wrong. Now, the way that I always teach my kids is try to set example and try to reason. And usually I have a high, very high degree of tolerance when I address children who ought to learn about right and wrong, good and bad. But it is hard to imagine that a 70-plus-year-old man, such as Lindsey Graham, would need to be taught in that way. Makes it even worse when one has to consider that Lindsey Graham is a senator, someone who has to be looking at really complex problems, complex issues that face the country. And this is that individual who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and he is also that individual who could go on national TV and say Donald Trump did not do anything wrong. Now, you blame Rudy Giuliani for the kind of defense he put up for Donald Trump. But regardless of what Giuliani has done, he is the president's attorney. Everybody expects the president's attorney to go and defend him. There is no if and but about that. That's what an attorney does. They do whatever, they use whatever tool necessary in order to defend his or her client. But what the country could not have possibly expected, not a surprise of course coming from Lindsey Graham, because since after the death of John McCain, Lindsey Graham was considered someone who would be level-headed, has turned into a complete moron and become Donald Trump's fiercest defender. Now I understand other rookies in the Senate, other newcomers who try to make a name for themselves and going on the defensive for Donald Trump in order to attract Donald Trump attention, in order to curry favor from Donald Trump. But a veteran senator in the Judiciary Committee putting that kind of performance? Now, whether you are a Donald Trump supporter or not, whether you are a Republican or not, that should sadden you to see that a legislator, someone we trust to have a brain to legislate, to debate, and to come up with some good outcome for the country, when you hear that individual making a case of the president being, well, innocent, because if you didn't do anything wrong, that's what that translates to. That has to give you pause. Of course, you may like it because, well, it's defending the individual that you give much loyalty to instead of to the country. If you are a Republican or a Trump supporter, well, that sounds like great to hear someone else putting a defense for Donald Trump. So it is not just the constituent who need education, who needs educating, but now we're finding that legislators, which is actually the sad part in the whole this debate, in the whole discussion, to have legislators saying things that are completely untrue, completely false, saying things that are, well, outright something you would hear from individuals who don't have any knowledge, any understanding, or individuals who couldn't care an iota about the country. But it's coming from Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Now, those type of behavior, while you may consider them as partisan, it is not. Because the implication the long-term impact to our nation, to the future generations, is very grave, detrimental to the future of our country. The past 70 years, Republican Party in general has been going down a path that simply says, we don't care about the United States of America. Yes, of course, they can all say they patriot. Which brings me to say, George Washington warns us. He said to beware of pretended patriotism. A patriot is not someone who just said, I am a patriot. A patriot is not just someone, just because someone went to war doesn't make an individual a patriot. We've seen plenty of such examples already. A patriot is not a temporary matter. A patriot is not someone who just happened to stand and salute the flag during the national anthem. This is not the definition of patriotism. Today we're watching the United States of America but even worse, now senators, congressmen, following that same path with no care in the world as to what that So today, before we approach the individual, the feature individual, we ought to talk about in relation to the 2020 race to the 2020. We will take a quick look back in history and show you the danger that our nation is currently facing, because for reasons that are still not understood, the whole Republican Party, the leadership, the elite, all have embraced a path which is clearly not showing any loyalty to the United States of America. But when it is coming from senators, from congressmen of a political party, it makes the problem all the more dangerous. Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question? Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the people. Throughout history, dictators, authoritarians have always tried to delegitimize the media in order to get away with corruption, scandal, and yes, even abuse. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accusing the media of fabrication. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent. It is necessary. It is critical. Our very freedom depends on it. George Washington warns us to beware of pretended patriotism. It wasn't a statement he made when he was drunk, when he was drinking, or when he was so old he didn't know what he was saying. In his prime time, also at a time when it was almost certain that individuals who serve in the Newfoundland member of his cabinet, anyone who actually was part of the new government who pretended to be patriot could become a traitor. Although Mr. Washington had his share of such during his time, but it would not be until 1861 that the country would be facing a real test of people who pretend to be patriot. You see, 1861 marked one of the darkest moments in the history of the Republic. It was the beginning of the Civil War. Now, for more than two don't
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
In 1861, a gentleman by the name of Jeff Davis, that guy. Now, the reason the behavior of Senator Lindsey Graham is so scary, so reminiscent of what had happened to the United States of America, and also almost like a prelude to one of the bloodiest, of the most treacherous time in the history of America. It is worth noting that Republican Party, the leaders, those whose responsibility would be to guide the constituent, would be to help the constituent move from darkness into light, or at the very least help them to understand what the country is going through in the process, but instead the individual who are inciting the constituent to do what is wrong. This is nothing new because, as I mentioned earlier, we had that same predicament in 1861. Jeff Davis, who is he? Well, Jeff Davis was the only president for the Confederate States. Now, the Confederate States was created out of those states during the slavery time, those states who would not go along with what Abraham Lincoln, then president, was proposed, which is to abolish slavery. You remember that Abraham Lincoln signed the executive order, the Emancipation Act. And what that did was to, well, abolish slavery. But because there were many states who would not go along with that, then they wanted to split from the country. They wanted to build their own a different country. A country, one side of the United States would be okay with slavery, and the other side, which was the Union, would not. But prior to that, there was just one United States of America. But Jeff Davis, who is he exactly? Now, as I just mentioned, he became the first and only president of the Confederate States. But before he was that, and that's the reason you should pay close attention to what's going on today in Washington, because Lindsey Graham's statement is not just a statement. It is a state of mind which is reminiscent of what was going on in 1861 when the country was on the brink of splitting between the Confederate States and the Union. Now, Jeff Davis, before he became president, he was a United States Senator. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind closely, because every time that we talk about slavery, a lot of Republicans today want to bring the fact that the Democrat Party was the party which opposed the end of slavery. Now, here's the interesting part that nobody seems to want to acknowledge. The Democrat Party is today the Republican Party. So which means the people who didn't want to end slavery are the same people who belong to white nationalists, who belong to KKK, and those same people who are promoting, who are championing what Donald Trump is doing in regards to immigrants. So the party has never changed. It just shifted name from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party. It's not like it's the Democrat that have become Republican and Republican have become Democrat. It's just a shift in the name, but the same ideology, the same principle that they had, the same thing that they embraced, which was Democrat at that time, now automatically shift to becoming Republican. So nothing has changed. I said all that so that I can make exactly the point I'm trying to make. Jeff Davis, his full name is Jefferson Davis. Jeff Davis was a U.S. Senator from Mississippi. And he was a senator from March 1857 to January of 1861. And now keep in mind that January 1861 is the date when he actually became the first and only president of the Confederate States. In other words, he had to give up his position as senator, as U.S. Senator from Mississippi. Now, before Jeff was a U.S. Senator, he was the Secretary of War. Yes, he was the United States Secretary of War from March 1853 to March 1857. It so happened that when that post ended, the Secretary of War, that's when he began his post as U.S. Senator from Mississippi. So Mr. Jefferson had really a very busy political, and you could say even armed life, army life. So Mr. Davis was also Secretary of War from 1853 to 1857. And he was a congressman, a U.S. House of Representatives for the state 1845 to 1840. So Mr. If you were to think about it logically, Mr. Davis was a very busy man serving the country. He was active, serving the country. Mr. Davis studied at Transylvania University. He also went to West Point Military Academy, where he got a degree, a BS degree. He served in the United States Army. He pledged allegiance at that time to the United States of America. He ranked to the first lieutenant to the colonel. Mr. Davis was part of the Mexican-American War, and he even fought in the Battle of Monterrey and the Battle of Buena Vista. So Mr. Davis was not a stupid man. He was well educated, well rounded. He understood his action have major impact in the country. But just like we see today, doing things that benefit him than benefiting the country. At the time that Mr. Davis decided to leave the United States of America and joined the Confederate States, Mr. Davis had 113 slaves. He owned 113 slaves. So the idea of freeing slaves would have deprived Mr. Davis of, well, his properties, the slaves. So he no longer saw the interests of the United States or as priority, but rather his own interests. As we see evolving right under our eyes today, Lindsey Graham and company, they're not doing any of the things that they're doing just because they believe so much that Donald Trump is innocent or they believe what they're doing is right, but because they only saw their interests as priority, not those of the country. Mr. Lindsey Graham is trying to be on the good side of Donald Trump to curry favor so that he can be reelected as U.S. Senator, which is coming in 2020. So loyalty to the United States is out of question as far as the Republican Party is concerned. So it was during the 1861. All those who thought that their interests will be jeopardized by the Emancipation Act, because Abraham Lincoln was very determined to free the slaves. And all those individuals, senators, congressmen, people at that time who felt that, well, my interest is more important than that of the country. So what they did, they went along and tried to split the country. So they plunged the country into a civil war, which lasted 4 years. At the very least, millions of lives in casualties and wounded. So as you can see, this is nothing new for the United States of America. It seems that from time to time those, and it seems to be pretty standard in the Republican Party, every so often they have to show how disloyal they are to the United States of America, because they spend time and time pretending to be patriot, and yet at any moment notice they're willing to give up their loyalty to the country in order to defend their personal interests. As such, today, once again, the United States of America is at the cusp of a predicament which might turn even worse. We saw that happen before. Can it happen again? It can, because as we are watching, we are seeing evolving, we are witnessing all members of a political party behaving in such a way to make the clear statement that the United States of America does not matter. Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the people. Throughout history, dictators, presidents, and presidential candidates have always used the media as a tool to influence the opinion of the people. Authoritarians have always tried to delegitimize the media in order to get away with corruption, scandal, and yes, even abuse. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accusing the media of fabrication. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent. It is necessary. It is critical. Our very freedom depends on it. Who is Kamala Harris? Well, before the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, you recall, Kamala Harris, along with a few other Democrats in the Judiciary Committee, became stars. The way that they questioned Brett Kavanaugh, it actually put to shame the idea that someone who is to be placed on the Supreme Court, a branch of our government which pretty much has the last word on anything, that individual had a very difficult time actually providing an accurate answer to any question. It was a sight to see, but unfortunately here in America, it's not about qualification, and it's not about transparency. It's about if you are a member of a political party and the legislative branch is controlled by that party, it's totally irrelevant whether you qualify or not. As such, we already seen at the very least two individuals whose qualification would prevent them from getting an entry-level job in the legal system. Now those individuals were appointed, confirmed by the Senate Republican to be placed as judge. As I mentioned earlier, the country for the past 70 years has been going down, plummeting in importance, plummeted in terms of criteria that used in order to make our institution better, in order to elevate the country. Instead, Republicans have resorted to just do what is expedient, do what is better for the Republican Party, regardless of how detrimental it is to the United States of America. As such, we have been presenting you, we have been featuring a candidate in the Democrat Party vying for the Oval Office, but more importantly, asking for your vote in order to take on Donald Trump. So who is Kamala Harris? Now, Kamala Harris is currently U.S. Senator from the state of California. She became the state senator in January of 2017. But before Kamala went national, she was the Attorney General of the state of California from January of 2011 to January of 2017. And of course, in January of 2017, she became U.S. Senator for the state. So, of course, she had to give up her post as Attorney General. So you can imagine that she has very extensive legal background, and that's what serves her well during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing to question him, just like she would question someone who is accused of a crime. And Brett Kavanaugh performance left a lot to be desired in someone who wants to be placed on the Supreme Court. Notwithstanding the fact that he was accused of having done something in his past in terms of sexual assault or sexual harassment, but that aside, his performance as a judge left a lot to be desired. Hey, but what could Democrats do? The Republicans were in control and they did what they wanted to do. Kamala Harris was also the district attorney of San Francisco from January 2004 to January 2011. As you can see, she's been pretty busy, and there is no break between a particular post that she held and another post. For instance, she was the district attorney of San Francisco 2004 to 2011, and in 2011 she became the attorney general. When she left the post of the attorney general, she became the U.S. senator. So she's been really pretty busy, especially on the legal. Kamala Harris was born in October of 1962. So she is she was born Kamala V. Harris. She was born in Oakland, California. She is currently married. She went to Howard University where she got her BA. She pursued her study at the University of California where she got a Juris Doctor degree. So in terms of political experience, as you can see, well, those were mostly in the justice system, but now that she is a senator and she's been ramping up her credential as an individual in Washington. And thus far, the reason that Kamala Harris must have considered the idea of bidding for the presidency of the United States is probably because during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, Democrats were so impressed with the way that she questioned Brett, they consider her a star for the Democrat Party. Of course, when taken individually, and it's any person who has to compete with somebody else and had behaved or said or done something that's noticeable, yeah, people are going to want you to be, well, to go higher. And of course, as such, Kamala Harris must have considered that as the right moment to jump in. So she but there is also the other side of the coin, which is it's good that they have the aspirations such as Kamala does, but the big question is never about whether the individual has aspiration, but rather what can she offer? Because it's not really about the individual. Well, it is kind of about the individual, but the big question always, what does that particular individual want you to consider him or her as the next president of the United States? What does that individual have to offer? That's really the question. What does the individual have to offer? Now let's take a quick look at that very question. First, Kamala Harris went to Howard University and she majored in political science and economics. Well, obviously, she must have had this vague idea at this early stage in life that she may jump into politics. Already in her was it sophomore year? Was it freshman year that she was already a member of the debate team? In 1990, Kamala Harris was admitted to the State Bar of California. At first, she served as a deputy district attorney in Alameda County in California. That was from 1990 to 1998. So already, right after school, because she graduated at the University of California, the Hastings College of Law, in 1989. So right after that, she was admitted to the State Bar of California. And in 1990, that's when she actually served as deputy district attorney in Alameda County in California. So she must have had, she must have made some big impression on someone, because she just came from, she just graduated. She just got the state bar, and her first job is deputy district attorney. So that was impressive. Now in 2000, that's 10 years later, more specifically 2 years, because after she became the deputy district attorney in 2000, she was selected, recruited, if you like, by the city attorney Louise Rand to join her office, and she did. Now, all that is exposure for Kamala Harris in terms of on the aspect of the law, not so much politics, but I'm sure, being the smart individual that she is, any one of those offices that you work at, there is plenty of politics going on, and in the case of working for the city attorney, then I'm sure that she got a feet to work. How the politics of things work. But in her time, even as time law enforcement person in California, she was not always like when she made decisions. And example was the fact that when she was cracking down on truancy, she ended up hurting more people than I. And stories, many stories of such. Because now, Harry, big idea. What does she? Now, in among those who would support the green. Become a policy. Now, what does that mean in reality? That she would support that idea. She is also Bernie Sanders of Medicare for All. Bernie Sanders has been the average teacher a $13,500 salary increase. She wants to introduce, well, that's October, not that she wants, but last October she introduced a leave for the middle class house. Elevate the middle class, not passing tax cut for people who are already rich, but people who actually needed businesses, small businesses, individuals. Kamala Harris also has been very much in support of decriminalizing sex work. In other words, people who are engaged in prostitution, to provide them the umbrella of the justice system so that they not just push aside some kind of garbage, especially in this aspect of our country where their death are not rather to find, and also calling for a more Kamala Harris has been to big idea is among all those issues that I just mentioned. The least idea, the tax cut for the middle class. She wants to make certain that middle class and small businesses are the ones that take advantage of a tax cut, not deny that fact, but how Mrs. Harris will package that type of message in order to excite people, worth watching, it's worth following, but don't of the United States. Tomorrow we will take a look at, well, another individual. We'll take a look at Cory Booker to see what he has to offer. But whatever you're doing this presidential election, keep in mind the country is much more important than any one individual, and the country is much more important than any political party. As such, we should pay close attention and we should get involved, because the future of our country is at stake. A small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies presented to its audience as news, Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore. Well, the country has had many great men. And especially coming from a situation that they could not possibly like, they fled England. It was a time during which, well, kings, queens had full power, full control over anyone and everyone's life. You see, many of us, especially those who were born here in the United States, have always taken freedom for granted, because you never know what it's like not to have freedom. But that's not the problem. It's the being detached from the fact that freedom is not an inheritance. You see, in 1933, a gentleman by the name of Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. At that time, Germany was just like America. In other words, it had a democratic system. It was called the Weimar Republic. It has a system very similar to what we have today. It has the Reichstag and the Reichsrat, which are equivalent to Congress and the Senate. It had a president. It had a vice president. It had a chancellor. It has the whole system in place just like we have today. And Adolf Hitler was legitimately, that's the operative word here, appointed Chancellor of Germany, contrary to what a lot of people that I have interacted with and talked to seem to think, that Adolf Hitler was just a dictator. How did that happen? How did it come about? Adolf Hitler was legitimately appointed Chancellor of Germany. And he fulfilled his duty for full 18 months under the watchful eyes of the President of Germany. But one thing that Adolf Hitler was doing, still within the boundaries of a democratic system, was rallying support from senators, from congressmen, in order to achieve what would later become his signature government. Cruel, monstrous, and he managed to do what was not anticipated. He managed to become one of the worst, of the cruelest dictators in the 20th century. But it didn't happen by accident. You see, congressmen, senators were the one fueling, feeding, nurturing Adolf Hitler behavior. Yes, you heard correctly. Adolf Hitler did not become the dictator that he was by himself. He could not have. In fact, there was the Act 1935 Act that was ratified by Congress and the Senate that gave Adolf Hitler power that no other chancellor ever had. Was legitimately done by Congress and the Senate, well, Reichstag and Reichsrat. So don't get in your mind Adolf Hitler became a dictator because, well, that's what he was. He was legitimately appointed. He managed to gain the support of congressmen and senators who passed, ratified legislation that gave him the power that he expanded to become the dictator that he was. So when we see people like Lindsey Graham and company, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, all those individuals, senators and congressmen, coming and defending the action of a president who have no concern for the United States of America, one should not look at it as partisan bickering, because it's much more than that. It is very dangerous. Our democracy is not immune of those type of problems. Germany was a democratic system. Hitler, with the support of senators and congressmen, turned it into what the world later feared and would swear to never let happen again. So when we see that the President of the United States, despite all the damages he had done to the country, have the support of senators and congressmen shielding him, it's just a matter of time before they too go along with legislation that would give him that kind of power. No, it's not far-fetched. It happened before. Democracy is not an inheritance. In order to protect it, the country has to get rid of those very individuals who are not concerned about its well-being, who have put loyalty to a man above the loyalty to the country. Lindsey Graham has done that. Jim Jordan has done that. Mark Meadows has done that. Yes, a number, Devin Nunes, Paul Ryan did exactly the same thing. A number of Republicans have put loyalty to a man over loyalty to the country. And as such, we, citizens of the country, should be very afraid as to what that may mean for the future of our nation, for the future of the Republic. Yes, the 2020 election can and should take care of this problem by getting rid of Donald Trump. But the big question is, what if it does not? It is the responsibility of we, the people, to get rid of those senators, to get rid of those congressmen who are going along with the idea of eroding our democracy, trashing our constitution, and trampling the rule of law. Their words today, Republican legislators' words today, are worth absolutely nothing, because they concern their interests, their priorities are not to the United States of America. I hope this was of some use to you. If you have question, comment, criticism, suggestion, please do not hesitate to contact us. Should you have any topic, a particular topic you would like us to talk about, let us know. We will research it, we will debate it right here on the Fourth Branch, the place for common sense. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. See you next time. The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.
kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who make love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. Tide is high, but I wanna be your number one. The tide is high, but